Good morning. Welcome to our daily class in Rabbi Nachman. Yesterday on Patreon, we had a very subtle series of concepts that I want to explain again because it really teaches us very important principle about leadership, why we don't seem to have many leaders nowadays, and maybe perhaps answer the question, where are the leaders? It's a subtle set of concepts that we have to go through. So I did my homework and went through it again, and this is what we learned yesterday, but we're going to repeat it in a very clear fashion. Step by step, it goes like this. When people sin, God gets a little bit angry. He pulls his face away. Just like when someone upsets you, you turn your back on them. Okay, so that's the first two stages. Now what happens is if you're righteous, if you're a spiritually sensitive person, you feel that anger. You feel some kind of dis-ease with the world around you. And that anger causes a righteous person not to want to lead the people. Do you want to be a leader of people who sin? Do you want to be a leader of people who go against decency and basic laws? Probably not. So when you have that spiritual sensitivity of a righteous person, you pull away from leadership. So that creates a vacuum of leadership. Okay? But what happens is the righteous person, his heart has mercy. He loves people. He loves the creation. He loves God. And so slowly his heart softens and he feels mercy for the people. And he sweetens that anger that God has. Now this is an outrageous idea. That God feels a little bit of angry and that a human being has the ability to sweeten that mercy, that anger of God with his own mercy. So this is a tremendous thing when you think about it. That man has the ability to shift God's mood. Good thing, right? Especially on a bad day. So the tzaddik has this ability. He takes his mercy, he sweetens that little bit of anger. And then God sees, wow, look at this righteous guy. He's taking on my anger and he's sweetening it with his own mercy. And so God, what does he do? He adds mercy upon the original sense of love and kindness. He adds more mercy into the heart of the righteous. And the righteous decide, well, you know what? I feel all this mercy for the people. And naturally, if you have real mercy for people, you want to help them. You want to help them in any way that they want to be helped. It doesn't mean you want to be a politician or you want to be president, but it does mean you want to help where you can be useful. And that idea, well, becomes a leadership type person. And when he accepts the leadership, he's known as a merciful leader, as a good person who is someone you can trust, and not a leader who we're always suspicious of what's going on behind the scenes with their business, with their personal affairs, with their finances, with their relationship to all the different institutions in the world. And nowadays that seems to be the problem. It's about having faith in our leaders means that we have to really, really believe that this person is righteous and has the people's interest in mind first. Otherwise, it's no good. We don't want such a leader. Okay, so that's all the backdrop of what we learned yesterday in our daily class on Patreon. I wanted to come live today on Facebook to share these ideas because when you understand it and people is crying out about no leaders, where are the leaders? Well, maybe if the people, that's us, that's all of us, would get our acts together and be righteous, then God wouldn't become angry, and then the tzaddik would be, the righteous one would be willing to be our leader. Because he says Mefarash, explains exactly that the really righteous people don't want to lead when things are in a bad state, spiritually. Because, it's like taking over a losing team, It's not a happy joke, And so it's a difficult situation. So it's our job to be better people, and then God will answer us with mercy and the proper leadership. But if we're not good, then why should we deserve a good leader, a true leader? And the ultimate example, of course, is Moses. Moses, who was, chased out of Egypt by Pharaoh. Moses, who felt the mercy. He was a king in Midian. He was treated with royalty in Midian, and the nearby nation. And Midian today, by the way, is Saudi Arabia. And so there's an interesting connection between ancient Egypt and Saudi Arabia, which is Saudi Arabia today. It wasn't called that then. But the nation of Midian was there. And so there's this connection between the Jews and the Saudis. It's a very interesting thing because some say that the Mount Sinai is in northwestern Saudi Arabia, and you can catch that on YouTube. But nonetheless, besides the connections, that Moses went back and he was willing to take the people out of Egypt. He was willing, only because God forced him. It even says God was angry at Moses. And God was angry at Moses because he didn't want to take the job. And he didn't want to take the job because who knows, I can't talk to Pharaoh. I stutter. I'm not a good leader, a spokesman. And God said, no, because you don't want to lead, you're the best example for a leader. So it has to come from our mercy and love for people and not from any personal gain whatsoever. Okay, with all that said, we have a larger picture from our daily class, which is this story. And it's a metaphysical metaphor. And the story goes like this, that there was once this great rabbi, Rebbe Yonatan, and he was on a ship, and he was out at sea, and he saw a treasure box floating in the ocean. And so, around the treasure box, there were fish swimming. Now, it looks like they were shark. The lashon in Aramaic is birsha. In Hebrew, karish is a shark, and kaf and bet can exchange. But nonetheless, this treasure chest was floating and it was being surrounded by fish, and this great rabbi and Amorah jumped in to try to get the treasure box, and the fish came to bite his leg, and he threw vinegar in their face, and the fish swam away, and then a voice came out of heaven and said, "What do you have to do with the treasure box of the wife of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa?" Now, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was a known miracle worker in the times of the early days of the Talmud, and his wife was also an extremely righteous woman, and she was given this treasure box that we're told in the future she will give out to Chelet, the blue thread, to the tzaddikim in the world to come. Now, what that exactly means is up for interpretation, obviously, but the whole story begs interpretation. Why is it there? And the treasure chest it was embossed with precious stones. So what Rabbi Nachman does in his classic ways, he takes apart each little piece of the vision and he explains it according to Hasidic and Kabbalistic understanding. So that's what we do with these Torahs. We take it line by line, paragraph by paragraph, because otherwise it's like a nice story, but what is it really trying to teach us? So what we've learned so far is that this treasure box, he's telling us, that had precious stones in it. What does that represent? Right, the argaz. An argaz is a treasure box, but it's the same letters as roges. Now, in Kabbalistic learning, wherever you see parallel letters, you can be sure the concepts are related, because every combination of Hebrew letters is a remanipulation of the light of God. See, God is one light, but He creates through manipulating the letters of the Aleph Bet. And we study this every Thursday night on the Lighthouse Torah Project, if you want to check that out, about the letters, the holy letters of the Aleph Bet, and how they interpret and create reality. So the word argaz is the lashon Aleph, right, roges, or anger. So this anger, remember, we talked about this anger right now. The anger is first God's anger at the way humans behave, and then it's the tzaddik taking in God's anger and repairing it, sweetening it with His mercy. Roges, he tells us, what are these precious stones that are in the box? This is the idea of a crown. A crown, that kind of fits with a treasure box, right? How so? This is bechinat rachmanut. It's an aspect of mercy. Why are precious stones a symbol for mercy? Well, he's going to explain for us. Because it's connected to the idea of a crown. Because, of course, they put precious stones in crowns, like the crown jewels, etc. And these fish that were circling around the treasure box that are called birsha, zebechinat emunah. These circling fish are called faith. Why? Because it says in the Talmud, in Masechet Megillah, it says, Tachat ha'na'atzutz ya'aleh berosh. And over there, the prophet Yeshaya is talking, the simple interpretation of the prophet is, in replacement of a thorny bush, we'd rather have a beautiful cedar tree. So what is the prophet talking about? A brosh in English, of course, is a cedar tree. And na'atzutz is any type of thorny bush. So, of course, you'd rather have a beautiful cedar tree in your backyard than a thorny bush. But why is the prophet using this metaphoric language to describe? What's he describing? Well, a cedar tree is often referred to, of course, the cedars of Lebanon, which they used to make the Beit HaMikdash, which they also used to make the palace of King David. But the idea of a barosh is also connected to the idea of the righteous people. And the natzuts, the thorny bushes, are like, they grow on the ground and you don't want to step on them. He says, listen to what he tells us. Zeh b'chinat Mordechai. To pardon the drilling that's going on here. They're working on the yeshiva. This idea of Mordechai, Zinikra, who's called a Jew. Why is he called a Jew? Al Shem shekafar b'avodah zarah. That the idea of being a Jew, the first definition of a Jew is, I do not serve idols. I do not serve foreign powers. I don't serve foreign countries. And truly, we are supposed to honor our nation and honor the laws of any nation that the Jews are hosted in. But we don't worship them. There's only one being in the universe that's worthy of human worship. As it says, Kol ha-kofer ba'avodat elilim nikra Yehudi. Now, the lashon here is ba'akum, which literally means avodat kochavim u'mazalot. That means people that give their power to the stars and this constellations. So the stars and constellations, well, in Kabbalistic astrology, they do have power. That if you're born at this time in this month in this year, there is a certain influence on your soul. And every human being is born sometime under a different influence. So we give credence to astrology, but we don't say that locks a person down in his reality. Okay? It's a big difference. So we look to astrology in Kabbalah as an exploration of our traits, of our tendencies, of our inclinations. But it doesn't certainly fix a person in his place that he's always going to be a certain way. It just gives us a direction of what we need to work on. And so that's a huge distinction, because that's the difference between serving idols and bowing down to the sun and the moon and saying, oh, look, it's a full moon tonight. What does that mean? In Kabbalah, what does it mean, a full moon? It means that the moon is full as the idea of the ripening of the powers of kingship. And also, of course, as a full moon has to do with a woman who's ovulating. And there's all kinds of symbolic representation in these images of nature. But we have to be able to interpret them properly and in balance with the rest of reality before we can before we bow down to the sun and the moon. So this is an important thing, and this is why the rabbis were because back in the day, people didn't have that software to make a distinction between God and his creation. It was like, oh yeah, I believe in God, and I believe that the moon has a lot of power, and I'll serve God and I'll serve the moon. And they had no problem with that. And God says, yes, that's a problem. I'm jealous. Serve me. Don't serve me and other things. So when we make that distinction, that's really where the Jews cut off from the rest of the nations. Because, face it, Avraham's father created idols. And the whole world served idols at one time because they were serving the powers that lay behind reality. And it's hard to put that all into one creator and one unified force for goodness in the universe that we call Hashem, our God. Okay, so now, with all of that said, the Rebbe is going to teach us a very important principle about leadership. He says like this: sometimes a person thinks he has mercy for the world. He sees a nice video about poor children that need food, and he feels mercy for them, and he writes a check or he sends off a PayPal to somebody. He gives charity. Very nice. That's what we're supposed to do. But sometimes people will take that mercy and say, I should lead the world, and I should be the leader of things because of my mercy. And what does he say next? He wants to be leader. But in truth, the person is really running after honor. See, in his own mind, he's translating his urge to lead as mercy, but in truth, it's coming from a deeper desire for honor. See, so we have to be able to make the distinctions in our own intentions. Yeah, I might feel mercy, but it might also be that I want the honor of standing on the platform and giving the speech. Because people like that. And he says, no, I'm doing this because I have mercy for the people. That's why I'm running for office. But in truth, he's really far from the true mercy. So, this ability to make distinctions in ourselves is a godly gift, because we don't want to fool ourselves. We want to be true, because if I'm not true to myself, how can I be true to others? And how can I be true before Hashem? So this is an important thing that every leader needs to really check in himself. Am I doing this because I want honor? Because I like sitting and running board meetings? So I want to pound the gavel in the House or in the Senate? Or am I doing this because I really feel mercy for these people and I know I can help them? And it really has to be the people first, which is really the way that America started. That's the idealism behind the founding of the United States. Now, what's happened today, we're not going to go there because, well, you've probably already been there. But he tells us another condition, because all the time that our faith is not complete. Now, complete faith means I have faith that everything is from Hashem. She'ein shlemut acharav, and he says the shlemut is complete. In other words, there's nothing that happens that's not connected to the original power of the universe. Bevadai ein lo lekabel melucha. He should not receive kingship. As long as your faith is not complete, a person should not receive kingship. V'hanhaga, and power and leadership. V'afilu mi shema'amin. And even the person who does have faith, he has a certain amount of faith. But like, for example, he has faith, but he also doesn't like when a black cat, walks in front of his path. The rabbis say don't walk under a ladder because it's dangerous. It seems a pretty fair assumption that a tall ladder leaning on a building could be dangerous, and don't walk under it. But another person will say, oh, that's bad luck, don't walk under a ladder. See, that shift in consciousness is exactly what we're talking about. That's the difference between complete faith and where my faith is a little fallen and I have suspicion. And suspicion means I'm worried about things happening. In Hebrew, it's called ba'akrai. In other words, it's not connected with the synchronicity of God's running the world. Rather, it's circumstances, and that type of thinking is already what we call not complete faith, right? If I believe there's a coincidence, then I'm already pushing God out of the equation. So we don't believe in coincidence. And I remember when I wasn't religious 30-something years ago, and I said to God, listen, if you're real, I'll serve you. But if you're not real, let's not waste our time. And I realized I can't believe in anything's a coincidence, because either he's one or he doesn't exist. The very definition of God demands that. Otherwise, it's like the universe is in pieces. And it can't be in pieces, because we say every day, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. When we say God is one, we mean one in every aspect of reality. V'yikar Rachmanut, he tells us the essential nature of mercy and the merciful, Bahasarat takum, is the removal of idol worship. That's why our patriarch Abraham, his first job was to bring people in his tent, to give them food, and to ask them to bless the creator of the food. And when they would start talking about, well, it was a good year, and the moon was right, and the sun came down nice, and there was good rain, let's bless the rain. Because they blessed the Nile in Egypt. No, don't bless the Nile, don't bless the rain. Bless God, or you can pay for the meal. That's how he used to do it. So people, it's kind of catch-22. Either pay for your meal or bless the one God. And even a little bit of faith in the intermediary. Now there is an intermediary in the universe. It's called the indwelling presence, what we call Shekhinah, the divine presence. That's where the infinite God brings down a thread of grace upon a person, that he will speak high things, he will have the vision of the future, he will know people's thoughts, he will be able to differentiate falsehood and truth, and guilty and not guilty, etc., etc. When the divine presence is God sending down his grace on somebody, that's the real intermediary that we want to deal with, and not any of these other symbols of nature and in reality. Filu kishomer tzvi hafsiko, even if a guy, right? If a person is is in the forest and he sees, oh, a deer stopped. Something's happening. It's a sign. That's already not the way we want to think. Okay, the deer stopped. Maybe we need to stop. Maybe he's going to jump in your trap. If you want to eat a kosher deer, you have to have a kosher trap, right? You can't shoot him. So, but we don't want to say that things are superstitiously based. We want to say, what is God teaching me about the deer? That's different. That deer is sensitive, like the divine presence. The deer is listening very closely to reality. That's like Hashem himself. Then we're starting to use our intellect to extrapolate teachings from reality, from something as sweet, as simple as a deer. But if somebody has suspicion or about such a thing, then ein lo rachmanut b'shleimut, his mercy is not complete. And then he should not receive leadership. Even he has great faith in all the principles of the Torah, he cannot be halfway when it comes to faith. Until he says, until he investigates, he explores himself, that he doesn't have any fallen faith within himself. Right? Could go, and he gives us the classic example from the Talmud. Darkei Emori were the ones that were superstitious people. They lived right across the Jordan River at the time of the Bible, and the Emorim were known for all types of superstitions. Don't step on a crack, and don't a black cat, etc., etc. But these type of things, an intelligent person is not going to fall for that. Okay, and we know that the God commands us, Tamim tiel Hashem Elokecha. Be innocent with God doesn't mean I'm foolish. It doesn't mean I overinterpret reality. It means that I'm whole and complete with my faith. And I watch reality closely and I pay attention, but I'm always turning it back to the Creator and His purpose and His direction, His guidance. And then your mercy is true mercy. And such a person who really checks himself that way, he is a fitting leader. And then he repeats the idea again that someone who doesn't have complete faith, and it seems like he should rule the world, this is a problem. In the end, his government will turn around from a government of faith to a government of special interests. And because he tells us, me'at aminut pogea b'malchut. That Hebrew phrase means a little bit of special interest is going to destroy the kingship. In other words, the kingship of the leader, the true leader of the universe. The idea of leadership, again, is turned over to the foreign forces, to the outside interests. So even a person who's a little bit into these types of things, he's not to be trusted with leadership, because the minute he comes under pressure, he's going to turn to the biggest donor or the biggest corporation or the previous party's line, and he's going to forget his own values and forget the lines of principles that he started out with. So you see, it's not easy to be a leader, because you have to hold up your principles to the highest level. And that's a Jewish ideal. And okay, whether we reach it or not, each person in his own level. But if I was a politician, which I'm not, thank God, I would, you have to check yourself day and night, because you're getting phone calls all day. You're being stressed all day by all kinds of interests. That's what people do. So what are you going to do except believe in God? And you cannot, because you can't go right. It's not right or left. It's not Democrat or Republican or Likud or blue and white. right? It's not about these things. It's about what God knows what's best for every situation, for every choice, for every reality in human affairs. And that's what we go with. So I wanted to share all this with you because Rabbi Nachman has given us a guideline for how things should really look. And we should be merit to see such a leadership in our own lives and in our countries, in our communities. And you'll see that life will be a much happier place and the world will be a great place to live in. All the best to all of you. We'll continue our daily classes in this material from Rabbi Nachman on Patreon. I'm also on Web Yeshiva, Lighthouse Torah Project. I'll be live on Mentor Channel very soon with a whole series on meditation and Kabbalah. So we've got a lot coming out there, and hopefully we'll see you there. Have a great day.